All right. Looking good. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Awesome. Thank you. Um, if you don't know why you're here, or if you're questioning which episode you signed up for, this is Teen Speak, talking with Nadat. And this is a taster of a longer course in adolescent-focused motivational interviewing. This is just a taste. The full meal deal is a whole heck of a lot longer. So I hope that this kind of intrigues you and maybe even enlightens or reinvigorates some of your previous motivational interviewing experiences, and that you are that you find enjoyment and some fun, hopefully, in this presentation too. I am Jennifer Baker with Women's, Children's, and Family Health, the Adolescent Health Program. I am a mother of a very vibrant, vivacious 4-year-old. You see her down there at the bottom of the screen, holding a dandelion, a very large dandelion. She loves those things. Also a dog mom of Django. He's a very sweet, eyebrowed, wonderful animal. Keeps my blood pressure down. And on the far right-hand corner, well, not far right, but closer to the right-hand corner, that is a beautiful ice cream cone, which I do love. That is sometimes part of my self-care. And surrounded by the people and things that I love, being outside, being with my friends, and in the upper right-hand corner is my mother and my grandmother. Kitchen dancing is a very important part of humanity and just being joyful, as is music. And my partner, supporting entity and best friend in the upper left-hand corner is Tom. He's also a very good chef, makes good food. And one down below that musical note, you'll see a stage lit up. So I really miss seeing music live. And so that was one of the things that I think that I've missed the most over the course of the pandemic. We did get a chance to go see one of our favorite bands down at the Gorge, all masked up and all spread out. So that was a really exciting time. And then the very far lower right-hand corner is a picture of me when I was an adolescent. And so I wanted to bring that forward too, because although maybe we have changed a ton since our adolescence and in our roles, we may feel differently and look differently and have different adolescent, no longer adult responsibilities, but we still have that experience in the back of our minds, and we know what it's like to be a teen. But even though you were never supposed to say that to a teen, that is still kind of a remembrance of how we experienced life back then and who we were back then. Or if you're currently an adolescent, go for it still, and that's great, especially if you're a near peer and surviving out there with young people on their side as well. Just to note a couple privileges, and knowing that I work for state government, I am light-skinned, I have a bachelor's degree, I'm a military brat, I have insurance, I'm a homeowner, I attend therapy regularly, I'm cis-presenting, I was born in the US, and I'm sure there's more privileges, but I wanted to mention those first because that's the framework within which I come from. And I'm currently living and working on the land of the Dena'ina, Shinena, Denena lands, and wanted to make sure that those pieces were acknowledged, knowing that where I come from and where I am inhabiting and living with gratitude. And to just give a little acknowledgement also for our reimbursable services agreement with the Division of Public Assistance and where my position and this work is funded. And also to Dr. Jennifer Salerno, who is the author of Teen Speak and initiator for the RAPS assessment process, which is where a lot of this motivational interviewing with adolescents has come from. To get us kicked off, and I know some of you may be driving or do not have access to the chat feature. So if you want to do, because there's so few of us, if you would like to do introductions over, instead of, you can either choose either via chat or verbal, just maybe your name, the school or agency you work with, and potentially a land acknowledgement if you have one on hand. If not, Pat's going to drop a link in the chat to reference where you might be able to find your Alaska Native lands. And then 1 or 2 words, and I usually just ask for one, but people get really frustrated because there are usually multiple words that we reference when we think of us as teens. And try to stay positive for yourself too. So name where you're working with, where you're residing, and 1 or 2 words that represent you as a teen. Who would like to go first? Can I call on folks? Pat, you want to go first?
Sure. I'm Pat Sidmore, and I work in public health. I live in Juneau, and that's where I am today. I'm on Tlingit land, and have lived here for 25 years. I just really appreciate the culture so much. My children were raised here, and they're being exposed to that culture is unbelievably rich for them. 1 or 2 words that describe me as a teen. Younger, a lot younger. I would, boy, that's tough. It's been a while. I would say pretty easygoing, and much like you talked about, Jennifer, pretty privileged, frankly.
Thanks for sharing, Pat. Kristen, can I call on you? I think you're on mute, unfortunately. Sorry. I know. I'm gonna get a shirt that says, "I think you're on mute."
There we are.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Kristen Kelly, and I am in a new position this year. I am the school counselor for the joint operation. It's called the North Star Middle College, and it's a new position, a new school between the school district here in Fairbanks and University of Alaska Fairbanks. So I'm working with high school seniors that are attending school at the university. And this is on Yeti Trough land. And 2 adjectives that describe me as a teenager. It does seem like a long time ago, but I remember being very playful / rebellious, and kind of a jack of all trades. I was really enthusiastic and like trying new things.
Awesome. Thanks, Kristen.
You're welcome.
And Rochelle, can I call on you?
Oh, sure. Hi, let's see if
Hi.
I'm showing up there. Okay, my name's Rochelle, and I work on the J-Bear military base, and for Anchorage School District, I'm a health and social emotional learning specialist. This is on Denina land, and when I was a teen, I was pretty shy and awkward, I would say.
Awesome. Thank you. And when there will be a question later about if those characteristics are still part of you in some way, shape, or form. Tresha, could I ask you to go next? I'm not sure how far you're into your commute, or Tisha, sorry.
She's got it actually in the chat there.
I just saw it. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
This is it. Stop.
Creative and wild. I like it. Stoplight. Just to let you know. Yes. Thank you for sharing. And Giselle?
Hello, my name is Giselle Cravener. I am the Social Services Manager at North Pole Middle School. I looked it up, and I am on Tanana land, which, a funny story, when I first moved to Alaska, I thought that was pronounced Tanana, and people made fun of me. So I've learned 2 words that describe me as a teen. I had to think about it. I would say social, and at that time, a little boy crazy.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. And I think Katie, are you? Awesome. Hey.
Hi, everyone. My name is Katie Steffens. I work at the State of Alaska Tobacco Prevention and Control Program with Pat. I'm happy to be here and learn from everyone. I was born and raised on land that has been cared for by the Denina, and am grateful for it. 2 words. When I was a teen, I'd say blissfully unaware of the world beyond high school.
That's great. Blissfully unaware, which probably meant that you were well taken care of. Might be part of that too. I don't know. I'm making assumptions here. I could be completely wrong. Well, thank you for that. And I think we had one more join too. So Elsie, in case you're wondering what we're doing, is we're doing introductions. So if you could give us your name, school or agency, if you have a land acknowledgement you'd like to include, there is a link we can drop in the chat for you, since you probably don't see it since we dropped it in before you attended. And then 1 or 2 words that described you as a teen.
I am not a student. Oh, but describe me as a teen. Okay, my name is Elsie Sampson, and I work for Manila Association as a wellness coordinator, but I'm also on the local school board at the Norvik, at our Akaluk High School, our school. And land acknowledgement. I'm not sure what that is. 1 or 2 words that describe me as a teen: energetic and curious. That was
Excellent.
me.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. All right. So between creative and playful and rebellious and blissfully unaware and social or boy crazy or all of these things and creative are all kind of particular characteristics that we recall of ourselves back in time. And so these are kind of pieces that I want you to recall and remember as we start to work through motivational interviewing skills. This is important because it kind of puts us in somebody else's shoes, or back in time where we were experiencing a whole heck of a lot of changes in our life, in our physical development, brain development, social development, emotional development. There are a lot of things that change in an adolescent's life earlier in their life, especially one of the adolescents being one of the most deep developmental periods of our entire lives, excluding in utero. So being thoughtful about that as we go through the next bit of learning. So the goals of the presentation today are just to be a quick taster, an introduction of a fabulous tool for effective conversations, and not just with teens, but with anyone in our lives, and to have some fun. I think that all of you by now probably know your raise hand feature that's on your, and that is going to be located in your participants module, and then also your chat and your ability to do some reactions. So if you want me to slow down or to speed up, or if I'm talking too fast, or if you're not getting it or you missed something or my slides stopped working, please tell me. How embarrassing for me to keep running away. Thanks for the thumbs up. I appreciate that, Pat. If everyone wants to practice, go ahead and practice all of your buttons if you'd like. Unless you're driving, Tisha, then we'll be okay with that. Cool. Thanks, Katie. Awesome. Self-care today. This is an important component when we think about social emotional learning, when we think about where we are in our own personal growth and development. We know that self-care is adopting an action that kind of helps you reduce your stress. And this is not one of those things that's like you're going to go on a spa day once a month and that's enough self-care. Self-care is essential to being there for other people. These activities can usually fit into 7 categories. That is that emotional, the physical, the spiritual, the intellectual, and all these different safety and security components. And so although we're not focusing on self-care today, I want to emphasize that it's an essential component for effective motivational interviewing skills. So what does self-care look like for you? You can either drop it in the chat or mic yourself, open your mic there and let us know what you do for self-care. Something you do on a daily basis to regulate emotions, or that you do to like get ready for a conversation with a young person in your life. Walking the dog, quiet time or a walk. Yeah. 8 hours of sleep and working out. Meditation. Great. Music. Yes. Giselle, we're on the same wavelength. Stretching and yoga. Awesome. Eating well and hydration, driving, excellent. Talking to friends and family. Awesome. And thinking about these things, how are there times where you get put into a situation where you have to deal with something stressful where maybe you didn't get an opportunity to do these things that take time? Is there a show of hands, or have anybody been put in that situation where you have to deal with something stressful or have a really hard conversation and you haven't been able to take care of yourself? Yeah. Awesome. I mean, not awesome. So when those situations happen and you still have to have that conversation, what are some things that you do in order to regulate, to bring yourself back to center before you have some of these challenging conversations? What are some of the things you can do? Deep breathing, breath. Yeah. Yeah. And I think if there are other pieces too, there, singing, yeah, finger holds or stretching or taking a moment to yourself, even going outside, changing your location, having a cup of coffee, kind of centering yourself, finding grounding. Those are very important pieces. Staying quiet, finding a quiet place to refocus, naming my feeling. Oh my gosh, Michelle's got it. Yeah, that's a tough one. Yeah, awesome. So these activities can help prepare us for co-regulation skills. With a show of hands, how many of you are familiar with co-regulation skills, or a thumbs up if you don't want to do your hand raising feature? Yeah. Okay. Awesome. So for how many of you, or what does co-regulation look like in real life? Would one of you be willing to share, come onto your microphone and share an example in a non-incriminating, potentially personal but non-incriminating story or example of co-regulation, something that you've experienced in your life? It's a tough one. Zelda, thank you for joining. See that you're off mute. Do you have an example?
I did, and it just left me. Sorry.
It's okay. Quite all right.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. So this morning, my daughter really wanted to wear a superhero outfit. And actually, that was yesterday morning. This morning was actually the Belle costume from Halloween. And I was like, we played dress up yesterday, but there's actual dress up on Friday at school. So maybe not wear your Belle costume today, because what if it gets dirty, or like all these things? And I'm like, what exactly is it about? And before I even started the conversation with her, I had to take a step back and take a breath. Is wearing the Belle costume, I had asked myself, is wearing the Belle costume going to cause her physical harm or danger? No. So, okay, you want to wear the Belle costume? You choose to do that. But if it gets dirty, it's going to be hard to wash. You choose. And then she didn't end up wearing the Belle costume. I'm not entirely sure why. I'm sure it wasn't for what I said. But I do recall taking a step back and asking myself, is this worth the fight? And taking that breath. So yeah, co-regulation is defined by Emily Butler and Ashley Randall as a continuous unfolding of individual action that is susceptible to being continuously modified by the changing actions of the other person. So I'm going to say that one more time, because it's a multi-level thing. So it's an continuous unfolding of an individual action that's susceptible to being continuously modified by the continuously changing actions of the partner. So when we experience emotions or conversations, we don't experience them in a vacuum. And that's going to be essential today when we get ourselves cared for prior to caring for others. Lauryn Hill used to say, you ain't going to win if you ain't right within. So let's think about that as we move forward today. These are probably poorly placed because I usually do them at the beginning, but I want to just make sure that we have some general youth-derived group agreements. So don't yuck my yum. What could that possibly mean for this particular scenario of group agreements? Don't yuck my yum. What does that mean to you? You can either chat it or say it. Yeah. Something might be for somebody else, might not be your thing. And that's okay. We don't want to say like, ew, right? Step up, step back. So that's going to be really hard for me because I'm facilitating, but at the same time, we're hoping that if you have questions or if you've never done motivational interviewing before, being willing to kind of step up and try something new. And Vegas rule, although I think this is the worst name for a rule because it also means that you're like hiding something from somebody, but really in this context, what it means is that yes, the session is recorded, but the breakout is not. And sorry, Patrick, surprise, there's one breakout. Hopefully that's okay. And in that session, what's learned here, what's said here stays here, what's learned here can leave here. So if you meet somebody and you're in one of those breakout sessions, yeah, being mindful of other feelings in the group and being thoughtful about someone's story. If they share a story with you and maybe you work with them, keeping that story itself and the efficacy or the ownership of that story for the person. Staying engaged and focused. I mean, it's really hard. We're all on Zoom calls. You might have your email up. You might also be texting. You might be doing other things, but please consider putting your digital distractions aside, muting your phone, closing your email, and being here with me today, with your peers. Challenge by choice. That is also another one. Any other thoughts on challenge by choice? So we will have one breakout session where you'll be asked a question and be asked to talk with somebody else. You can choose to not participate in that and just letting us know if you don't want to participate in that. And then videos on is appreciated, but not required. So you have the option to leave your video off, but if you are there while you're, especially when you're in a group one-on-one with somebody in a breakout room, that they can see your faces, because that's usually how majority of our one-on-one conversations happen. And it's good, important to see people's facial features and be able to see emotion in people's faces. Just a suggestion there. Okay, actually, before I go forward, are there any other agreements that you think are missing from this set of agreements? Okay, moving forward. Why is this important? So I think one of the most important pieces in our work as, in my work, especially as a adolescent health coordinator, someone that works directly with youth and for youth, as we like to think about shared risk and protective factors, which is all basically about what helps youth stay safe and supported and healthy. We know that one in particular that we like to focus on is this supportive adult relationship. And youth with supportive adult relationships, at least 3 to 5 of them, experience less substance use, misuse, abuse, have decreased sexual initiation, like the time period within delayed sexual initiation, and reduced number of partners, fewer suicide attempts, and decreased violence. That's interpersonal violence, experienced bullying, etc. And so we know that some of these pieces are referenced in the links. Thanks for dropping those in the chat. There's a few different links there from Becky Judd and Charles Udermal studying a little bit more in Alaska in particular about the impacts of supportive adult relationships and other protective factors for young people. So this protective factor really looks at teachers that really care about students, supportive adults in a young person's life, And even that one in particular, that 3 or more adults, is a protective factor that's about supporting, caring, and encouraging youth through relationships that are supportive other than family members. So that's neighbors, coaches, youth group advisors, mentors. And as children grow, they become more involved in an expanded network of people. And that protective factor kind of has a synergistic effect with other protective factors. So it kind of builds on itself. Thank you very much for dropping those in the chat. All right, so in the spirit of motivational interviewing, these are the kind of important pieces that we build upon over time, but are basically the framework and groundwork what we work from in motivational interviewing. And although this is originally a clinician and counselor-based intervention, there are some ways for us non-certified, non-certificated people to use some of these skills in day-to-day life. And this spirit is about being collaborative, where we're not confrontational, where we can develop a partnership in which youth expertise and perspectives and input are central into our conversations, where we foster and encourage a shared power. This is usually where I get a lot of pushback from parents and where I know it's hard too. Shared power with what, a 4-year-old? How do you want me to share that power? Like, they don't even know what they're doing, but really they do. They have a lot more knowledge about where they are and who they are in that point in their life, and being able to like find ways to bolster that self-efficacy component is really important for young people throughout the lifespan. Evocation and not education. This is also a hard one because we know, my dad used to say, do as I say, not as I do, which is really kind of, you know, convoluted, because like that means that you know everything, but you're doing the opposite. But what are you expecting of me? So we think about evocation. We're really invoking a motivation for someone that already resides within them internally. And that is enhanced by eliciting and drawing on a youth's own perspectives, experiences, and personal goals. And within this too is that asking permission and asking open-ended questions. And that's also a hard one too for some people. Like, hey, can I talk with you about something? But really what that does is open up the door to trust building. Autonomy and not authority. So this is about respecting a youth's right to make informed choices that facilitate change if they're ready for that. A youth that is in charge of their choices and then responsible for their outcomes is more likely to emphasize their own control and choice. So even if we tell them what we know is the right choice for them, they still might not make that choice if they know internally what choice they're going to make. Compassion. So we think about compassionate and empathetic and not sympathetic. So empathy for the experience of others is what we're trying to aim for here, that desire to alleviate suffering of others and belief and commitment to act in the best interests of the youth. Motivational interviewing in and of itself is not a panacea. It's like not the answer to everything, and I totally get that. But in the words of Terry Real, who's like a renowned marriage relationship therapist, relational living is actually a panacea. So being able to relate more closely with other people and develop some of these components are really some of the most helpful pieces for being able to, for long-term change, and not just within our roles as human beings, or sorry, not just about our roles as teachers, as supportive adults, but as human beings and how we relate to the rest of the world. All right, so that was a lot of talking. Does everybody feel like they have a good, did that make a lot of sense as far as the spirit of motivational interviewing, where we're coming from and how that applies to having conversations? Great, thank you. Okay. Angela, thank you for joining. Velda, does that mean you're sleeping, but then you woke up and said yes? that was the best. I appreciate that.
I'm sorry about that, my fingers.
Oh, it's good. I love it. It's great. Okay, so now we're going to practice. And this is an important piece where you might want to have your cameras on. And Pat is going to hopefully break us out into breakouts. And for those of you that are watching the recording, what we're going to do is go into dyads or one-on-one rooms, and we're going to talk about 2 phrases. And we're going to practice saying these phrases individually to one another. So I would say to Pat, "How was your day?" And then Pat would respond. And then he would say, "How was your day?" And then I would respond. And then I would go at the second part of the conversation, I would say, "Pat, tell me about your day." And then Pat would tell me about his day. And then he would do the reverse for me. Does that make sense for everybody as far as instructions go? Okay. And then, all right. Welcome back. Thank you. And for, is this everybody back? Do we lose somebody? 2, 3, 4, 6. Is that right? Okay.
I know Tisha had to step off because of.
Oh, okay. Okay. So how are these conversations different for you? Does anybody have a comparison they'd like to offer?
I'll go. This is Kristen in Fairbanks.
Thanks, Kristen.
So when we did the latter, when we said, "Tell me about your day," the conversation was much broader. We asked each other more questions, and we just talked a lot longer. In fact, we were mid-sentence when we had to come back to the big room. So it just gave the opportunity to say more for some reason.
And I'm not entirely sure why that is. Like, "How was your day?" kind of feels like a formality sometimes. Within the social constructs of American English, I don't know. Because technically that's an open-ended question, right? Where "tell me about your day" is more like an instruction. But it gives you like more of a generalized open opportunity to say like all about your day, like how you got up in the morning, what you had for breakfast, how you got to work, like all of these things. You're like, "I don't know, what should I talk about? I'll tell you everything." So being conscientious about the way we frame things and how we ask questions or how we engage with people can determine our responses, what we get back. How about feelings? What are some of the feelings that came up for you with number 1 versus number 2?
I always feel that when you ask somebody how was your day, it's very scripted and you get like real short kind of answers, and it's boring. You kind of lose interest. But I feel like when you can ask somebody, to tell me about your day, you can get into more depth conversations and you can talk about similarities, and one idea rolls off the next, and overall it's a more like intimate conversation.
Exactly. Anyone else?
Just to piggyback off what Angie said, "Tell me about your day" shows interest. "How was your day?" It was, like you said, a formality, and you might say good or fine, like some people said in the chat, but "tell me about your day" sounds like, hey, this person's interested in hearing. So it gives you more freedom to share.
Yeah. Awesome. I usually get better answers from the 4-year-old if I ask that, "Tell me about your day," or if I know something specific that she did during the day, like, "Tell me, did you eat all your lunch?" Then she's like, "Well, I ate some of it." And even though that's not like an open-ended question, she still has like I have this interest, or like, "Hey, what job did you do today at school?" And then I can say, what book did you pick out if you were the, librarian? Those kind of pieces that give you a little bit more opportunity to kind of point out something that a young person is interested in or another person's interested in. Great. So I'm not going to share this video, but we are going to drop the link in the chat for you to watch later. Maybe you all are familiar with the depths and differences of empathy versus sympathy. But these are important pieces to note when we think about long-term conversations. How does it feel? How does it feel to be in a conversation where someone is being empathetic versus sympathetic? So if someone were to say like, "Oh, I'm sorry," how does that feel versus I understand that feeling. I have been there before, or I haven't been there before, but that sounds really hard. I don't know how you can manage all that. What's the difference in those couple conversations? Has anyone experienced either of those? Or can you tell the difference between what those feelings are like? Okay, so maybe a better question would be, how does it feel when someone says, "Oh, I'm sorry"?
I think it's coming from a good spot. I appreciate them saying they're sorry, but I get the feeling it's kind of a pat response. They don't really know what to say. And yeah, I don't necessarily feel understood when they say that. It's kind of the end of the conversation.
Yeah, it's almost like that. How was your day?
Exactly.
Yeah. So it's not lending itself to more depth. It's not opening up the conversation and sometimes those are ways that we as human beings are like, I don't really have time to talk with you about this, so I'm just going to give you sympathy because I know that might be easier for me.
Yeah.
Maybe not easier for you. So yeah, take a look at that one. That's a Brene Brown Coffee Shorts video that talks about in an illustrated way about what the differences between empathy and sympathy are. Really great resource if you haven't seen it before. All right, so this is where we get to like more juicier kind of conversations. Maybe some of you aren't talking about some of these contexts within your organizations or your work, but maybe you're talking about them with your teens themselves, or maybe you're talking with a friend. So kind of considering what we're looking at here, these are the different types of conversations that we maybe are internally as parents or as supportive adults want to just give you information. And like my mom used to say, open up your head and pour the information in and send you on your way. Because that was much easier as for my mom as a single parent. But does that express empathy? And these are like some of the principles of MI. So expressing empathy, developing discrepancy, and not like, well, you said this last time. So it's about kind of that tone and the framing within which you offer the information or offer the opportunity to have a conversation. Rolling with resistance is another piece too. So if someone's like, I don't really want to like talk to you right now, and they say, that's all right. You don't have to talk to me right now. When's a better time? When was a good time for us to talk today? And finding different approaches when conversations become difficult, especially if someone becomes walled off. And then supporting self-efficacy and the feelings of like, I know you can do this, you've done this before, are feelings of like, if you're trying to quit smoking, or if you're trying to use a condom next time you have sex, or if you're trying to get your homework done. We've done this before, you've been here before, tell me what worked for you last time. So some of those pieces are like, the context is important within which we deliver some of these things too. And some of these examples you'll see on the screen are really about like somewhere into the depth of the conversation. This isn't all of motivational interviewing, it's just an example of some of the phrases that can be turned from talking at versus talking with. So let's look at the first one. And I put it here. I have an answer that I preloaded for these if we don't have answers, but I'd love to hear some of your examples. So you need to turn your homework in on time. This is an example of talking at. What would be an example of talking with? Thinking of the spirit of MI and the principles of motivational interviewing. There's not wrong answers. There's just workshop answers. So we can work through them. So thinking about open-ended questions.
Okay. I'll take a stab. What is preventing you from getting your homework turned in on time?
Yeah, that's an open-ended question. It also leads it to what you're trying to get at, which is like they're not turning their homework in on time. What's going on? Yeah. Any other thoughts? Inclusion of empathy in there.
I was thinking I could say that better by saying, like, I know this is a really busy time this semester. There's a lot of deadlines right now. Is there something I can do to help you identify some barriers of getting your homework in on time?
Yeah. So you're asking if they want your help, and you're noticing that they're slammed and busy, and recognizing some of those pieces. And then barriers too. So it's not like you're not worried about really as much of them getting their homework in on time. In my mind, is what I hear is that the barriers that are getting in the way. So then you actually get into more of the meat of maybe a conversation. That's great. Okay. So this would just be one of the examples. So what would it take for you to complete your homework on time? I know teachers are busy, so maybe they don't want to be like, when's a good time for us to talk about your homework? I'm concerned about you. Is something going on at home? So finding that sort of level of experience, and depending on which, expectations you have and the amount of time you have to be able to walk through that. So this is a more simplified version, but Kristen had that sort of level of like walking through the boundaries. Don't have sex. How does that feel? I mean, not sex, but how does that question feel?
There's no discussion to be had after that statement. It's just
Yes.
That's the end of it.
Yeah, it's not a self-help book, it's an instruction. Absolutely. Any other thoughts on how that might look different? Or how it might sound different when you're talking with someone? I know sex is hard to talk about.
I think that's not a bad place to start as an opening. I know sex is hard to talk about, and then of course depending on your relationship, but I think that can open the door sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know sex is hard to talk about. It's a big decision, like I care about you and would like to know what you think about starting, a new sexual relationship would look like. And I think this is the challenge too with a lot of like supportive adult relationships, and they're like, that's not my job. And then you ask parents, you're like, do you think this is your job? And they're like, that's not my job. We're hoping they learn that in school. And so then who are they talking with about sexual relationships? And I think the concern is for supportive adults are like, I just don't want to talk about that because it's the parents' job, and then the parents aren't talking about it. And then maybe they're not going to their child well visit once a year. So then they're not talking to their clinician about it. So then who are they talking with about it? They're talking on their phones about it. They're talking with their peers about it. So finding that time to really look at where youth are getting their information, how they're getting their supports. Those are some of those pieces. I'm going to skip a couple down to, or not skip, but just give you some of those examples and then deal with this last one. How does it feel when someone says, we need to talk?
Makes me want to run the other way.
Yeah.
Makes me
Ears
anxious.
on fire.
Yep.
So go ahead.
Feels-
Sorry.
It feels like you're in trouble.
Automatically in trouble. Yeah. So one of the ways that we try to look at this with that motivational interviewing kind of approach is like, I would like to talk with you about going skiing this weekend. And remember, these aren't always navigation of hard conversations. If you set them up for like good conversations, then isn't always this expectation like, oh, they're talking to me, they want my attention, they need to talk with me now. That means something bad's going to happen. So it's about really kind of like getting youth prepared to have these conversations by starting with good stuff. Like, hey, I want to talk about your grades. You did really great. I just want to know what would be a good time today to talk more about that. So really being able to fuel some of those harder conversations with great conversations, but in the same format. Any other questions about these, about the framing? Okay. And so usually with one of these conversations are who, what, when, where, and how. And the one thing that we don't usually talk about as often or start with is why. And why do you think that is? Any guesses? Why did you do that? How does that feel?
It sounds accusational or presuming that the person started the fighting.
Yeah, exactly. So if you were to say like, why would you make the decision like that? Or why did you choose to do something like that? When you could say like, what was your thought process behind deciding to do something? Then you can actually get more meat. Like they might not even know why they wore purple to bed. But maybe they have a better understanding of like, tell me about your decision-making process and what you decide to wear in the morning. Might give a little bit more context. And this is, you know, part of the motivational interviewing piece is just that this is a new way of conversating. It takes a little bit more time and energy to learn the process, but what it's about is about having the insurance in a relationship that you have made somebody feel good, that you've taken the time to, before they walk away from you, like, oh, I hear heard, I feel respected. I want to keep having conversations with this particular person. And I don't really know what they said, but I walked away and felt not judged. So that's kind of the spirit or the general goal of motivational interviewing, is that components of self-efficacy. So to learn more about Teen Speak, you can register for an upcoming training, or you can register, jump on our SurveyMonkey link and just send me your contact information that way. And then I can send you a book and a workbook or get you some online training. We do have a contract being set up with Possibilities for Change with a new website, online training that you do first. And it comes with CEUs, and I can give you more details about that via email if you would like. And other than that, here's my contact information. Do you all have any questions or thoughts about what we chatted about today? No?
I just want to say thank you. And I just think motivational interviewing, I use it a bit and it's just wonderful. And the teams I work with really respond to it. And it's been really powerful, the little bit that I've learned attending these workshops and reading the book and stuff. So I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Awesome. Do you have a copy of the Teen Speak book?
I do.
Oh, good. Great.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, everybody, for coming today. And I know this time of year and this time of life is really challenging. So the fact that you actually showed up to learn something more, to like promote your own learning and knowledge during this time is very honorable. And thank you for everything you all do for young people in the state of Alaska. It is so essential. So thank you very much for coming today.